Wait, he literally walked across France? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree, here once again, rocking it with the empathy, if you will. It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Yes, again, I'm your host, Joyous Expansion Life Coach Brett Dupree, here to talk about himself. Today I have a fun interview with Shawn Anderson, who is a very inspirational guy, so hope you stick around and listen to that interview. But this is the part of my podcast where I talk about myself. Basically, if I can't be vulnerable to my guests, how can I expect my listeners to be vulnerable? My guests to be vulnerable. So this week has been pretty good for me. Been thinking about the positives and negatives, as last year, of course, been very nostalgic over the year due to the fact, Toastmaster year. So I've been looking back on my growth over this past year, and that's what I remember talking about last week because, today is Monday when I'm recording this part, and on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, is kind of the year anniversary of me starting the Lightworker Toastmasters. The actual anniversary is the Wednesday is my actual anniversary, which I'm very excited about. I'm very happy that I was able to accomplish that. Though I am thinking about why I was successful with the Lightworker Toastmasters and not. But actually, no, I already know. And I think I already talked about that last year. So check out my Lightworker Toastmasters podcast where I talk all about how I started the club and how I pushed through it. But I've been thinking today about an addiction that I have. And since I've had a stable job in the last year and a half, this addiction has gone full force. But I haven't been too stupid about this addiction, but I have been kind of overdoing it, which is Kickstarter. Kickstarter.com is a wonderful, or maybe not wonderful, but it's a fun website where you help people with their desires reaching their dreams. You just give them money, which you can if you do like $5 to $1, or you can kind of pre-order their product. And it really can be almost anything. I remember one guy wanted to learn how to make potato salad, and he ended up putting up a potato salad festival because basically it went viral and everyone kept on giving him money, and he got like $40,000 to $30,000. I don't remember. I think it was like $30,000 to make potato salad. And so he put on a potato salad festival with the money, which is pretty funny. And, there's some controversies, some fun Kickstarters that never came to fruition. I know one, I kickstarted this awesome scale, but I never got it. And he just kept on delayed it. But luckily I was able to get a refund. At one point, I'm just like, I'm sorry. I just can't wait any longer. I don't trust that you're going to give it to me when you're over a year late. But anyway, this is not actually a part of any Kickstarter story. This is more of a Kickstarter of why I love Kickstarter. When I go to a board game store, I see a game that's $100 or $50 or $40 and it looks fun, but I don't know much about it and I generally don't buy it. But I have probably over the years kickstarted at least 30 games. I've canceled most of them because after a while when it gets close, I look at my budget, I'm like, I can't really afford this. So then I cancel, but man, did I really want to try out that game. And it is not just a discount. The discount is nice. The extra things, a lot of times you do Kickstarter, they give Kickstarter exclusives or these things they throw in just for the Kickstarter, which is fun, no doubt. But however, if I went to the store and it was like a store exclusive, if I spent $100 and even if pay that $100 compared to another store and I kind of wanted to check the game out, I probably wouldn't still buy it at the store. But at Kickstarter, I would want to buy it. I mean, part of it's the excitement of Kickstarter itself. It's kind of like when I first got into auctions online, the eBay thing, where sometimes at first I won some things more along the lines that I wanted a good deal, but someone kept on outbidding me to the point where I end up just spending the same amount of money as I would if I would have just bought it, which was not very intelligent of me, but sometimes you get caught up with that. And plus I was in college, so not being intelligent is, part of that age. Wise, I guess. But looking over Kickstarter, what it does is it does multiple things that I think any business can take the advice, kind of like see what it does. Because number one, it creates a story. When you go to Kickstarter, it's someone talks about how it's their dream and they really display their excitement. And the most fun ones I find are the people who are most excited, the people who really wanted to create something, and Kickstarter is the only way they can do it. And not only that, they also have the exclusives and the good deal, which also helps. But then there's also the community. The best Kickstarters have good updates where you really get to the point where you want to be a part of them. I've been through some Kickstarters who have daily updates, and I tend to find those mostly annoying, especially the ones that have the first 15 days you unlock something. And I don't really like that because it doesn't feel genuine. The ones that I really like are the ones where I know I'm making the product better through their upgrades. Because you get to certain levels, like 30,000, they do this, 40,000, they do this. And some of them, I look at them like, you could throw that into the base game. It's just 2 extra cards. That's not that exciting. There's no way it costs you $15,000 to add 2 separate cards, even if it's the art and everything. There's just no freaking way. I just don't believe it. But if it's a slightly better box, that actually gets me more excited. Or better cards gets me more excited. That's one thing this board game called Fantastic Factories did. Every level that it went up made the game better, and that was exciting. So being a part of a story, I think, is very helpful. And that's one thing I really want to do with my podcast. When I get guests on, I try my best to get them to tell their story. Sometimes I'm very successful, and I have these wonderful conversations where people really get vulnerable and talk to themselves about me, and other times people just come here and talk about what they want to talk about. I do appreciate the ones that do that and tell a story, which I think is important because honestly, I believe that's what people buy. They buy stories, but not only buy stories, they're entertained. Through the dawn of time, we entertained each other through stories. And there's almost nothing more important than a good story. I mean, think about it. If somebody just sat down and started telling a story and got animated and was a really good storyteller, you would sit and watch. You would. I know you would if you had the time. There's just something compelling about the story. I know some people don't want to tell their story. I know I didn't at first. I wanted to just espouse wonderful, positive things. But I realized more and more that I like, number one, sharing my story. I used to not. I used to try to create an aura of success where you look at my website, you look at my Facebook, my social media, and honestly, it looks like I have plenty of clients and everything's going 100% great. But number one, that just felt disingenuous, especially if I'm making a podcast. I have to think, what do I have to tell people? What don't I have to tell people to create that illusion? And number two, is it really that compelling? Is being successful just by ease really that compelling? I don't know. Plus, I just got sick of the facade. And that's why I tell people right now, Joyous Expansion is barely considered even a part-time job even. The amount of money I've made at this have been not very much. Just right now, it's a bunch of book sales, and by far the most successful thing I've accomplished is starting and running the Lightworker Toastmasters, which hasn't generated any income, but has generated a lot of personal growth and personal development. But I have created a community of people who are working together on their public speaking to get better. And it's awesome. It's one of the best things I've ever done. That's why I talk about it all the time on my podcast. That's why I talk about it during Lightworker Toastmasters. I'll talk about starting it because I'm so proud of it and I'm so happy about how strong the club is. We got Select Distinguished and we're not even a year old. And we're going to be President's Distinguished this year. That's DCP points. I could go explain it. But let's just say that in our district of 192, I think it was 40%, around 40% became distinguished, select distinguished, or president distinguished. The number is really not that high, which is, I think, extra impressive by the fact that we are not only select distinguished, which is 7 out of the 10 points you need 9 to become president, but we're able to become select distinguished with starting on 3 months behind everybody else. And with mostly new Toastmasters as well. Most of the Toastmasters were 19 of them were a year or less, and most of them were brand new. And I'm proud of that. It's an accomplishment, and I have to look at that as I want to do things. especially, for instance, the Church of Awesome. I think I talked about it last week, but there's part of me who's just hesitant in starting and getting that out there, because if I do all that work, I build a website and I try to do the things to build the actual Facebook group into my vision of what I want it to be. There's a part of me that's afraid that I'm going to fail. And part of me is sick of trying really hard to build something, do the research, and work on living my dream of inspiring people on a full-time basis, which a lot of people tell me I'm so good at, that I'm inspiring, that I've helped them so much in my life, in their lives, especially the Toastmasters in my club, people who've read my posts. I've gotten so many people thanking me for doing this by getting people to pay me, and especially if I create something, has not been successful. I mean, I do have a plan to go through that. I plan on paying off my credit card by December, and especially hopefully that all banks on keeping my job, that I will use the money that I was paying off my credit cards, which is about $500 or so a month, and use that to hire a coach and work with somebody for a year on really just getting this going and figuring out what I actually need to do, and someone to hold my feet to the fire. Because I said I joined that client attractive business school. That was $8,000 plus the money to fly there, and unfortunately the coach I got wasn't what I needed. I needed one-on-one guidance, and for $8,000 I could have gotten one-on-one guidance from somebody. And so that's my plan next year, to get one-on-one guidance and to help me gain clarity on what I really want to do, and to truly help me push forward and move forward in this as a way to package everything, how to get my website to look the best that it can, to get feedback constantly, because that's what I need, and to really get to the point where I start making money doing this. I just want to make some money. That'd be so much fun. Money. Yeah. Speaking of being money, I have an interview today with, I wonder how many people got the Swingers reference, Shawn Anderson, who has a wonderful story about how he worked on his thinking and was able to push through and inspire a lot of people. Plus, he has a lot of inspiring stories to tell. So I hope you enjoy this interview. Actually, I know you will. Let me tell you something about him. Shawn is a #1 ranked motivational author, unlimited thinker, and lifetime entrepreneur with a history of inspiring others. A 7-time author, Shawn is also the creator of Extra Mile Day, a day recognizing the power we each have to create positive change when we go the extra mile. Shawn walks his talk. Besides inspiring tens of thousands through his speaking and writing, including inspirational speaking tour in the Philippines, attended by 20,000 attendees, Shawn built a multi-million-dollar company, pedaled a bike solo across the U.S. twice, and created adventures in 45 countries, including having walked across 6 countries in the last 5 years: England, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and 750 miles across Shikoku, Japan. He will be walking 450 plus miles in his 7th country, France, in July 2019, which is this month. Still, he believes his greatest adventures and success are waiting to be lived. Now, here is my interview with Shawn Anderson. Hello, Shawn, and welcome to my podcast.
Mr. Brett Dupree, it's a privilege to be here today. Thank you so much for the chance to talk with you.
It's a privilege to have you. So let's start at the beginning. What is Extra Mile, and why did you create it?
Going the extra mile is all about adding just a little bit more value. It's doing just a little bit more. If you want better health, it's doing that little bit extra, those extra few push-ups. If you want a better relationship, it's doing more than what is expected. If you want to raise up in your career or your business, it's doing more than just the normal. Going the extra mile is for people who want to add additional value in their life. If you've got a huge goal that you are going for, you probably can't achieve that goal unless you're doing the little bit extra. Going the extra mile has been my theme for a long time, and it originally started when I created something called the Extra Mile Tour in 2009. That's how it started.
Interesting. Was there a time in your life where you didn't go the extra mile?
I've always a person who has really loved achievement. I've loved the feeling of succeeding. I love the internal motivation that it gives me, and so I learned at a young age that if I wanted to get good grades in school, it doesn't get by just studying your 15 minutes or 20 minutes or just doing your homework and not trying. It's making sure you do it and you do it right. And anytime that you add those together, doing it and then doing it right, it requires that little bit of extra. So I think the extra mile has been planted in me just because I wanted to give life my best.
So, what started this desire to give your life your best?
I just love the feeling of doing well. When we're a young person, in order to get attention, perhaps from teachers or parents, some of us we learn to excel because that's the way we get attention. And as we get older, we perhaps find the ability to succeed makes us feel good internally, and that becomes our motivation. It makes me feel good. I want to continue to do what makes me feel good. We're not seeking anymore to succeed to please others. We're seeking to succeed because that's what makes us feel the best.
So, at an early age, you got this internal desire to try to exceed and succeed best in life.
Absolutely. I just liked the feeling that came with getting an A. I liked the feeling of coming with making the golf putt. I liked the feeling of being able to make a basket. I like that feeling. And in order to create that feeling, you've got to continue to work at it and practice and becoming better and better and better at it. And that's what's called going the extra mile. It's just doing that little bit extra that allows you to be able to perfect your craft or to succeed at a higher level.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I also know a lot of people who believe that something like an innate talent that allows them to hit that basket or do well or get an A in the test. What made you notice that instead of worrying about having the right genes or the right family, but that fact it's your actual effort that allows you to succeed?
Probably was, I was a golfer at a very, very young age. And, I just was not born with an ability to take that club back smoothly and then bring it back down and hit the ball. I mean, that was not a talent that I was born with innately. That in order to perfect that skill, I had to hit golf ball after golf ball after golf ball after golf ball. That's where repetition came in. When it was the 30 words that was on the spelling test in first grade or second grade, it wasn't that those words came naturally to me. I did not know how to necessarily spell that word, but it was the memorization and the practice and the sounding of out over and over and over. I was not born with the ability to either be a great speller or to be a great golfer, but it was something that I had to continually practice and work on so that I became good. And it was areas like that which showed me that the more that I put into something, the chances are the more I'm going to get out of that something.
You learn to be self motivated and to go the extra mile. What drew you to helping other people do the same?
Well, I believe in life that far too people really clap for others. Far too people are really concerned about wanting to inspire or motivate other people to be their best. We've got so many whispers and voices in our heads that says, Brett, you can't do that. Brett, you're not good enough. Brett, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. And all this feedback that comes to us that just allows us to almost be like a turtle going to our shell. We don't take as much risk. We don't take as many chances. We don't do what we really want to do in life. So I chose just to become the other person. I said, absolutely, man, you can do this. You got this. I became a cheerleader for other people because I know what it felt like to not have people believe in you. And so I wanted to be the person that said, damn, yes, Brett, you can do it. You got this. Let's do this. Let's create a plan. Let's figure out how to make this work and then go for it.
Who in your life didn't believe in you?
Certainly the household that I grew up in wasn't one rich with positive reinforcement. Certainly at a young age, I had to learn that motivation was pretty much an inside job. Of course, all of us get through elementary school by what I call the MDT accountability system: mother, dad, waking you up in the morning, teacher, making sure you do your homework. But as we get older, that MDT accountability system starts to fade. If we even had it, we find out that motivation becomes more of an internal thing. That if we're going to achieve and we're going to succeed and we're going to reach for our goals, that we've got to pretty much be motivated. When we're going to college, we don't necessarily have people saying, hey, Brett, did you do your homework? Hey, Brett, come on, you've got to finish this. Hey, Brett, where are you at in your paper? I just wanted to be that voice that not only can hold people accountable, but also that keeps people true to what they want to achieve.
Cool. Seems like a good thing. I remember in college failing one, almost pretty much dropping out of a class because nobody told me to do homework.
And that's what happens as we go through life. Most of us succeed through getting through that K through 6, again, because that MDT, mother, dad, teacher accountability system. But then past that, when we start to go to high school and we start to come out on our own, we start to see more and more people not follow through with certain things because, again, motivation, self-inspiring, it's not necessarily easy. We might have failed once, and as soon as we fail, all of a sudden we go, well, I'm not trying that again. I already failed. Why would I do that again? Or we have other voices again that say, Brett, you can't do that. You can't, there's no way you can do that. We start to believe that crap, and then we start taking fewer and fewer risks, and we start settling for more and more mediocrity.
So, how do you pick yourself up when you fall?
Man, first off, I'm aware of it. I'm aware that life has knocked me down. I'm aware that my thinking is stinking at that time. I'm aware of the fact that I'm feeling something that I do not want to feel. And so it starts with a self-awareness that this is my life and I'm not happy with it in this moment. And so what am I going to do to change this situation? What am I going to do to change my feeling? What am I going to do to change my thinking? What am I going to do to change my action? Because that's what you and I have the control, the power, the force to be able to do. We can control our feelings, we can control our thinking, we can control our actions. When we learn to master those three things, we also start to master where we go in life.
Do you have an example of a time in your life where that you were able to turn it around?
Every single year, I do something called my axe sharpening exercises, where I go out and I actually walk across country. So I'm leaving in July to walk across the country of France, 450 miles across France. This will be the 7th country that I've walked across since 2014. I purposefully do these things because when you're out there on the trail, you're falling down all the time. After 5 or 6 days, you're not used to this. You go, oh my God, this sucks. I don't want to do this. My feet hurt. I just lost a toenail. I'm blistered. I'm lost. I'm hungry. I don't know where I'm staying tonight. Why am I doing this? I create situations that are tough, that you have to learn to have that self-talk with you and say, look, dude, you can do this. You've done this before. Be patient. Find something that you are grateful for right now. Find something that you appreciate right now and change your thinking, change your focus. That will then in turn change your feeling. I recreate these things for myself every year so that I call my axe sharpening. And picture this, if I handed you a very dull axe and I said, Brett, I want you to split these 30 logs, but this axe is so absolutely dull, you are going to get so tired splitting it because your axe isn't sharp enough to split. People are the same way. If we are not sharpening ourselves, if we are not sharpening ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally all the time, we will fade. We will burn out. We will not be able to get off our knees when life punches us. So it's a matter of keeping yourself sharp so that you can achieve the biggest goals that you're wearing inside your heart.
Yeah, that's one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people. Sharpen your saw.
Absolutely. Certainly another way to put it. That motivation, that self-help, there's no new idea under the sun, in the sense that man and woman for the beginning of time have sought out ways to motivate themselves to get out and plant the vegetables, to get out and go find work or whatever. It's been this purpose, this constant purpose throughout history, throughout life, of how do we learn to master this personal motivation or this inspiration. I have stood on the shoulders of giants, stood on the shoulders of people whom I have benefited from greatly, as far as reading and planting the seeds in me that now allow me to go do so for other people.
Awesome. In 2009, Symbolize Your Extra Mile. Was that your first time you've done this? When you did the 4,000 ocean to ocean bicycle ride?
In 2009, there was a whole lot of news that was really bad in America. Bankruptcies were at an all-time high. Banks were even closing. Foreclosures were at an all-time high. There was just there was a turmoil and an emotional turmoil of people losing faith in their ability to maybe get where they wanted, faith in their ability that the government was going to be able to create a program that was going to help them, faith in their ability that society was going to be able to rally around and help them. So I wanted to use my very small voice and remind people that if you want to create positive change in your life, you've got to quit looking at other people. You've got to quit looking at your partner, your spouse, your boss, or another employee. You've got to quit looking at the government. You've got to look at the man or the woman in the mirror. And you've got to say, what am I doing? What am I doing to create more of what I want? What am I doing to go the extra mile? So as a symbol of going the extra mile, I decided to do something very Forrest Gump-like, and I pedaled a bicycle from one ocean to the other ocean. And although that might be cool in a Forrest Gump sort of way, the real power of the Extra Mile America tour was that I created events in 21 cities with the mayors of those cities, where I had the chance to interview over 200 people who had been identified as having gone the extra mile in either doing something really amazing that's benefited society or chasing a goal that was so phenomenal because they never gave up. At the end of that bike ride, at the end of that tour, I chose 10 of those people, gave each one $1,000, gave away $10,000 of my own money to the stories most inspiring to me, is just another way for me to go the extra mile.
What was the story that inspired you the most?
Well, fiddlesticks, so many really cool stories, but I'll tell you one. I was in the state of Ohio, and the meeting was at a United Way office, and the people that I'd interviewed that day were there. And after I had spoken and talked to some of these people, this one particular person was led up to me, and she was being escorted on somebody's arm. And I thought, okay, that's unique. And I was introduced to a woman named Sheila Holsworth. And the reason that she was being escorted up to me is because Sheila Holsworth was blind. Sheila Holsworth, when she was around, I believe, 10 years old, the orthodontic headgear to straighten her teeth that she was wearing back then, the orthodontic headgear, one day it snapped. And when it snapped, the rubber bands came up and it gouged out both of her eyes. So from a very young age, 10 years old, Sheila Holsworth was completely blind. She could have chosen just to live life as a blind person, but Sheila chose to go the extra mile and to live differently. Sheila Holsworth put fear aside and she started downhill skiing. She became a trick water ski jumper. She rode a bicycle tandem across her state. She lived life in a way that you and I with eyesight could live. And she would go down as fast as she could down snow skiing hills. And the way that a blind person did that is there would be a skier in front of her that she would be tied to with a rope. And as the skier went down, Sheila knew how to turn left or right by the way that she felt the snow come up and hit her chest. So that's how she was a snow skier. Water skiing, she would get on the back of the rope and she just wouldn't hold on, but she would do trick jumps, man. You and I, there's things that we are afraid to do with eyesight, but Sheila showed me that the only limitations that can really hold us back in life are the limitations that we set for ourselves. And so that was one of the 200 people that I had interviewed.
That is an excellent story. Wow. See why that stuck with you.
And certainly there was others. I remember being in Denver, Colorado, and there was Brad and Libby Berkey who had a real passion for opening a restaurant. Opening a restaurant might not be that big a deal, but you went into their restaurant called the Same Cafe, SAME, standing for So All May Eat. On your menu, you don't see any prices. At the end of the meal, you don't get a bill. At the Same Cafe, they wanted to make sure to serve amazing, delicious food, and you pay whatever you can afford to pay at the end of the meal. If you couldn't afford to pay anything, then certainly you could end up sweeping or doing dishes or something else, because everybody has a chance to have a little bit of integrity by doing something to earn their meal. Same Cafe, their model started to become a model for restaurants all over the country to open up in different cities.
That's so cool. We could use a couple of those in Seattle.
Absolutely. We're held back by what we think we can't do. And, certainly there's stories like that. And oftentimes you'd say, well, how could you ever open a restaurant when so many restaurants close down because they don't make it? How could you open a restaurant where you're not expecting your customer to pay? Well, if you believe you can, you can. How can you ski down a hill if you don't have eyes? Well, if you believe you can, you can. And that's the way it is. Sometimes we might have this dream or this goal, but there's this voice inside us that says, you can't do it. You can't do it. I'm sorry, you don't have enough money. You don't have enough time. You're not fit enough. You're not whatever. Well, you know what? If you believe that, then that's true. Whatever we believe is going to determine how far we can go.
So how do you silence that part of your mind that tells you can't do it?
Again, Brett, I believe it's awareness, man. You've got to be aware that that is what is whispering your direction. You can't do it. You're not fast enough. You're not tall enough. You don't have enough money. You're not smart enough, whatever it might be. It's being aware that that exists and then doing things that reprogram that stinking thinking. It's then making sure that you're reading positive material, you're listening to positive things, because I believe that the mind is just a muscle, like the muscle in my right bicep that I might be flexing right at this moment. The mind is this muscle, and you can either strengthen it for positive thinking or strengthen it for negative thinking. But the key is, what are you thinking? What is the most dominant thing in your brain? Because you've got to be able to hear yourself talk. You have to hear what's coming out of your mouth and what your brain is thinking, because you go, oh, I don't like that. That's when you go back and you start tweaking that thinking. You start soaking in the motivational books. Earlier, I know that must be something you do. You mentioned Stephen Covey, that you're familiar with Covey's work. You started programming yourself with that particular speaker. That's what we do.
Who are some of your favorite speakers?
My favorite authors of all time, the two authors of all time that have made the biggest difference in my life is certainly Og Mandino, O-G Mandino. Og Mandino was the first person whose motivational books I realized it just doesn't have to be a list of 10 things. These are the things you do to be successful. These are the things you do to be a millionaire. These are the things you do to be a better speaker. But Og Mandino shared motivational, inspirational stuff in a story. His model started to be how I would write my books. The second one was Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin's The Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. I learned then about an accountability system. Benjamin Franklin took 13 virtues of what he wanted to change in his life. Again, that was his self-awareness. These are the areas I'm lacking. These are the 13 things. He created performance charts and he created a measurement system to measure how he could improve and how he was improving in each of these areas. That there showed me the power of accountability, personal accountability, and how you take your own performance achievement and results up to the next level. Again, Og Mandino, Benjamin Franklin, the two most influential people that I've ever read.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard about the Benjamin Franklin, that audio biography. He's a great person. So what goals do you have for yourself in the future?
I have a mission for my life, and it's a mission statement just like a business would have. My mission statement is to empower 1 million people to lead a more positive, passionate, and purposeful existence. So everything that I do is basically pointing back to that mission statement. The projects that I take on are pointing back to that mission statement. My own axe sharpening helps me become better at that particular mission statement. Again, to empower 1 million people to lead a more positive, passionate, and purposeful existence.
How do you plan on going about doing that?
Well, certainly, reading and writing has been a big deal. I've written 7 books. Certainly, I've had opportunities to speak all over the world. I had one particular speaking tour in the Philippines, my first extra mile world speaking tour. When we went over there, and for 30 days, we had a cumulative audience of 20,000 people. The two greatest gifts that I think people can really master if they want to influence people are certainly the gift of speech and the gift of the written word. And certainly those are two of the ways. And with social media today and how much it grows, I have opportunities all day long of either planting seeds or watering seeds.
Nice. So you wrote 7 books? That is
Yes.
quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
How do you go about writing 7 books? So how did you start writing your first? Did you have any negative thoughts about writing that first book, or you just went right at it?
Well, the very first book I wanted to write, I went to school at Berkeley, and when I graduated from Berkeley, I first off, I've always been an entrepreneur, but right out of Berkeley, I needed to survive. And so I took a graveyard shift job at a 7-Eleven from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. And after the coolers and the shelves were stocked at around 2 or 3, there weren't a lot of customers coming in. And so right then I started reading every motivational book I could lay my hands on. And that's where I learned the power of really motivating and inspiring yourself in order to inspire others. Back then was when I read the Franklin autobiography, and it made such a difference that I wanted to create my own accountability system. And so that's why I knew I didn't want to work at 7-Eleven forever. I had these dreams, these visions that I wanted to do. So I created an accountability system called SOAR, SOAR. I was running out on the beach one particular day, and I saw a seagull flying way out over the ocean, and the seagull that seagull was on his way to Asia. And I go, man, that seagull, he's flying way up there, way out there. He's not afraid to go where he wants to go. I want to live my life with that same lack of fear, that same inspiration. I want to soar like that bird. So the SOAR is how it happened. The S, Brett, stands for seeing, be able to see your dream so clearly you can taste it, smell it, breathe it. That is what I want. It's seeing with your mind's eye. That is where I'm going. The O stands for organizing that dream into a step-by-step plan. It's not enough to have a dream, but what are the steps to get to that? The A stood for acting on that plan. You can't come home and turn on the TV and start buying imaginary vowels with Pat and Vanna. You've got to to take action on that plan every single day. S, seeing. O, organizing. A, acting. And the R stood for rejecting. Rejecting failure, rejecting when you didn't do it, rejecting your own stinking thinking. SOAR. So I came up with that plan, SOAR. And before I was the age of 30, I became a self-made millionaire. I wanted to share SOAR with other people. So the very first book that I wanted to write was sharing this book called Soar to the Top. However, when I first started really approaching publishers with it, nobody was interested because people didn't know who you were, who I was. So I knew I had to write a book before Soar to the Top that gave me credibility. I had just finished graduating from Berkeley. I knew how to succeed in college, so I wrote a book called Countdown to College: Preparing Your Student for Success in the Collegiate Universe. Because I had experience and had a track record, that was picked up by a publisher, sold a few thousand copies, and then Soar to the Top was picked up. And that's how it started. That's how I wrote the first book, by stepping back and writing another book before the book that I really wanted to have published. Since then, I've put out 5 more books.
Awesome. Wow. Congratulations on putting out those books. I like your acronym a lot. SOAR.
Seeing, organizing, acting, rejecting. I still live by that 30 years later. Every time I take on a project, again, I melt everything down into this simple process of SOAR. Is my vision clear enough? Do I know specifically what I want? Do I have the step-by-step plan organizing? If I'm not achieving, is my action significant? Am I taking solid action? And certainly that's being able to say, you know what, I'm not getting where I want. Let's go back. Is my vision clear? Am I missing a step in my plan? Am I missing a step in my actions? How I accomplish everything is with SOAR.
Do you have any fun success stories of anyone putting your words into action?
Oh, fiddlesticks. I have a weekly blog that I put out called Inspiration Thursday every Thursday. I think I've written 386 of those dudes in a row. Every week I'm blessed that the words that I'm sharing with people has made a difference in their life in various ways, whether it's in their own health or perhaps choosing to have a little bit more courage than they might have had before. Brett, every single one of us, we have the opportunity to walk with the sort of steps that could help inspire other people all the time. And people are watching what you're saying and what you're doing. And, I think if we live an inspiring life, I think that others can become inspired by it in whatever ways works for them. There was a woman who never had learned to swim, and she was from a country where swimming wasn't a big deal, and she was 70 years old, and she said, you know what, I'm finally going to have the courage because of what you've done to take swimming lessons. So not every goal in life has to be gigantic, but every goal for ourselves is important and huge to us.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Your courage in having this podcast, your courage in taking all the steps that pushed you over the top. And I know that you are an avid Toastmaster, and I believe that you had shared that you started joining these particular Toastmaster clubs and even forming your own because you had a fear of speaking. It's people like you who inspire other people that, gosh, look at what Brett did. If Brett could do that, then maybe I could do this. I think when we live our lives richly inspired, I think in the end of our life, we're going to have a chance to say to ourselves, wow, life well lived. And honestly, that's what I want to do, man. I just want to burn out this vessel. I want to go for it. I don't want to have regrets. No regret living. That's my policy. No regret living. If I ever feel an ounce of fear, I sit there and I analyze why I'm feeling fear because I don't want to. So I say, okay, well, guess what? I'm going after you, fear. I'm putting you back in the closet. I'm going to do what I'm afraid to do. Because the more that we address the fears in our life, the wider our circle of comfort becomes. And the wider our circle of comfort becomes, the more everything great we're able to bring into our life.
Nice. We are coming towards the end of our time together. And one thing I like to ask my interviewees is to give a 1 minute of motivation. You can imagine this such as you have a time machine and you go back to your 8-year-old self and you only have 1 minute to convey the information you need to succeed. Or you can think of it as just condensing your entire life's purpose into a minute.
What I would say is, certainly never let the words of another person stop you from listening to the own whispers in your heart that tell you that you want to do it. If someone says you're not big enough, fast enough, good enough to go for it, you don't have to listen to them. The passion that you have in your heart to walk certain directions, make sure you listen to that and go for that. And never let fear becomes so big that it limits where you go in life. I would teach people to fail and to fail often because the more used to failing, the more chances we have at succeeding. Don't be afraid to fail because the more you do, the greater opportunity you will have to eventually succeed.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on my podcast, listening to your story on how you go the extra mile and created your own virtue system for you to live with is extremely inspiring. And the way that you help other people do the same through your words, through your actions, and through your writing is something that, in my humble opinion, has made this world a better place. So thank you for your service to this world, and thank you for coming on my podcast.
Well, Brett, thank you. And thank you for your courage. Thank you for your example. Thank you for your inspiration. And thank you for the chance to be a guest on your show today.
May your day be special.
Create a great day.
And there you have it, folks, my interview with Shawn Anderson. Isn't he an inspiring person that makes you want to get rid of your stinking thinking? One thing I loved about what he talked about was the fact that he did a good job of going out and doing something. He saw a problem in this world, something that he wanted to help with, and he did it his way, which I think is important. I have a lot of friends. You see that a lot, especially on Facebook now, of people who are just traumatized about what's going on in the world today, and they want to spend all their time complaining and being sad about it. And honestly, that doesn't do much except for make you sad about it and feel helpless and defensive and defenseless. Defenseless is what I mean. I don't mean this in a sense of they're becoming victims or victimization. No. I think a lot of things that are going on right now are legit problems. However, unless you're going to do something about it, then really you are wasting your energy. And there's so many things you can do. You can do something like Shawn did, which is want to inspire people to stop looking out the outside world for their inspiration and do something that gets people to inspire to better their lives. Because if you work on bettering your life, then you will become a more happy, joyful person if you are pushing forward rather than watching just the news. But again, just pick up, call senators, leaflet campaign, do something with that energy. That's the problem with stuck energy. When you don't do anything, that energy just kind of sticks there, and that's where depression happens. It's thinking those same thoughts over and over and over and over and over again. I remember this saying of this grandma who's lived a terrible life, and people asked her why she's not depressed, and it's because she said, I'm too busy to be depressed, because that was back in the olden days where you had to make all your clothes and make all your food, and she just didn't have time because she was constantly doing the action. One of the negatives of the modern day is we have plenty of time to sit down and think about how crappy our lives can be. So finding something to do, even if it's a little, to push yourself forward will help. Sometimes it could be just bringing a hobby. I have a girlfriend and she knits, and it's super cool watching her getting excited about knitting. And when she's knitting, she's not thinking about the fact that Nazis are taking over the world. That's the beauty of doing something. So one thing I really liked that Shawn Anderson talked about was doing something with that energy of seeing that negative out there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I do my podcast, because even if I don't have the listenership that I would like, it makes me feel like I'm doing something to push myself forward. And for the people who do listen to this podcast, they can get inspired, even if it is just 5 to 10 listeners per episode. If it ever goes more, that'd be amazing. But focus on what I can do instead of what I can't do does not help me in reaching my goals in life. Focusing on what you don't have, focusing on your fears, focusing on the problems in your life will just bring more of that. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. And when your energy flows towards the negative, you can get stuck there into in a spiral. And a lot of times that spiral can lead to drugs and alcohol abuse and escapism. And your escapism doesn't even have to be drug and alcohol. I know when I go into that spiral, my escapism is food. I eat cakes and ice cream after eating Oreos and a big dinner. That's how I escape when I allow the negative thoughts to get into my head and push me down, especially when I stopped doing this podcast. If you noticed in like November, December of last year, when I slowed down on my podcast, I gained a bunch of weight because I got too focused on what isn't happening with my podcast. I got too focused on what isn't happening as being a president of public relations and Toastmasters, instead of focusing on the positive changes that I am making and focusing on the things that I can control. Because Shawn is right. You can control your thoughts. You can control your feelings, but not the initial reaction to your feelings. You can control what you do with them and then how you utilize that feeling. Sadness is just a feeling of loss. What can you do with that loss? Anger is just a feeling of really wanting change. So what can you do to facilitate change? It's the processing of those emotions. That is important. And I kind of went on a little rant there instead of talking extensively what Shawn Anderson talked about. But however, that's the part that really inspired me into thinking about it. And I very much appreciate him spending time and talking about going the extra mile, doing physical walks and things to generate the publicity while going around this world and finding inspired people and sharing their story. So if you want to follow Shawn, you can follow him at www.extramileamerica.org. You can also find out his Facebook, which is /Extra Mile America, where you can learn and read his blog and reading other people's stories, how they went the extra mile, so you can be inspired to go your extra mile. This has been Brett Dupree from the Joyous Expansion Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. If you want to email me on anything, you can email me at BRE2TsDUPR2Es@joyousexpansion.com. You can listen to more of these episodes at pod.joyousexpansion.com. Plus, I'm found at Stitcher, iTunes, Google, and a few other places where podcasts are available. And if you want me to be on a place, send me a message at my email address, and I'll work on getting me on there so you can listen to me on the podcast feed of your choice. You can find me on Facebook at Increase Your Joy. You can find me on Instagram at Joyous Expansion and Twitter on Joyous Expansion. You can find more about me at joyousexpansion.com, where I have a free ebook just for you on how to break through the prisons of fear. Also, if you're listening on anywhere and leave me a review, that'd be totally awesome of you. I'd appreciate that, as that helps very much in getting this podcast out there to more people. I hope you have a fantabulous day. I'm once again Brett Dupree, your Joyous Expansion Life Coach, champion of authentic joy, and catalyst of transformation of the Church of Awesome. Once again, wishing you to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play that jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach. Good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue. I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Yeah.